All right, hello everyone. I am Mrs. McGilvery, the school counselor here at Dubrook High School, and we are going to run through all of the fun financial aid things. Without further ado, there's a ton of information that we're going to have here, so I am just going to jump right in and get started. The agenda, we're going to talk about obviously paying for college. We're going to be looking at the free application for federal student aid for the FAFSA, as well as walking through it step by step so that it should be 100% completed by the time you guys go home tonight, or at least prior to coming back from Christmas break. After that, we'll look at some South Dakota programs, scholarship programs, grant programs. And then lastly, we'll look at some good resources that may be of use for your students as they are working towards getting applied for and getting ready for college in general. So first off, paying for education. Most people use these following resources to pay for college. First, we have savings accounts. These savings accounts can be from the student and or the parent. We have cash and earnings, which can include the current salaries or wages of a student or parent. We have financial aid, which we're going to be talking about tonight, so I'm not going to go too far in depth on that right now. We have tax credits and deductions. Now, these are on the slide more or less as a reminder, because while credits and deductions don't pay for college per se, they do help parents and students reduce their cost of education in the long run. Doing a brief overview of the financial aid process. First things first, you'll have to create an FSA ID on studentaid.gov. Now, each of you senior parents should have received an email from me on how to create an FSA ID. If you have not created one yet at this point, that is totally fine. We will go step by step through how to do that. You just may end up having to wait a couple days before you can actually fill out the FAFSA application. Step 2, you're going to complete the free application for federal student aid or the FAFSA. Then you will receive your FAFSA submission summary. Towards the end of this presentation, we will look at the FAFSA submission summary up close so you guys can get a good idea of what kind of information that will all tell you. 4, you're going to receive or review your award letter from the school. That usually arrives at some point in the spring and or early summer. Just kind of depends on how soon you get the FAFSA submitted, as well as how many other applications that the school has to go through. And then lastly, you'll decide which aid to accept and return your financial aid offer or award letter. You may have to confirm it online. Just kind of depends on which school you're going through. All right, this graphic here just gives a very brief visual of the process for completing the FAFSA. So ideally, the student will start the FAFSA. This is the preferred way by the Department of Education. It just makes the process go a lot smoother if the student is starting the FAFSA. After the student starts the FAFSA, they will end up inviting their parents to do their part in the FAFSA. So there is a student and parent section. The student section is going to be more of student demographics, as well as the student's financial information and what colleges they want to go to, all of that information. The parent section, on the other hand, is going to look mainly just at financial information, some demographics, and then confirming that the information the student put in is correct. Once that is done, you can go ahead and submit the FAFSA when it's complete, and then it will go on to that financial aid offer that you will receive from your school. So prior to getting too far into things, I want to cover some basic FAFSA terminology. So in the FAFSA application, it has definitely gotten easier the past few years, but at the same time, there can be some terms that are a little tricky. So I just want to cover a few of them here, make it easier to understand in the long run. So first we have base year. Base year is going to be the calendar year 2 years prior to award year. So this FAFSA form that we're going to be looking at is for the 2025-2026 award year, which would make your base year 2023. Now, what is your base year even used for? The base year is going to determine what year of tax information you need to provide for the FAFSA form. So this year, you're going to be looking at your 2023 taxes. For the following award year of 26-27, then you'll be looking at your 2024 taxes, and so on and so forth. Next, we have FPS, or the FAFSA processing system. This is what is going to look at all of your information, determine your eligibility, and keep all of your information for future use. Next, SAI, the Student Aid Index. We will cover this more in depth in a couple of slides here, but long story short, it is a number and a formula that is going to determine what you are all eligible for receiving. COA, cost of attendance. This is going to include your tuition, room and board, much more. Again, we will cover that in a few slides here. ISIR, the Institutional Student Information Record. This is what's going to go to your colleges of choice in order for them to be able to look back and see maybe what financial aid you have received before and what financial aid you are going to be eligible for the coming award year. FA, financial aid, and then a really big one on the FAFSA, contributor. Contributor is going to be anyone who is asked to provide their information, their consent, and their approval on the FAFSA form. Later on in the presentation, we would look at contributors and see who you would maybe have to pick. Sometimes there are, either divorced households or single parent households, in which it gets a little tricky to determine who's going to be the main contributor. The last two terms we have here are going to be more applicable to paying off student loans or once you graduate. First, we have deferment, which is a temporary postponement of payment, but interest does not accrue during this time. On the other hand, we have forbearance, which allows you to temporarily stop making payments or to make smaller payments overall, in which the interest does accrue. All right, I'm kind of jumping all over here, so I apologize for that. But we're going to look now at different types of financial aid. First one we're going to look at is grants. Grants typically do not need to be repaid. They are need-based. This includes Pell Grants, Teach Grants, Teacher Education Assistance for college or higher education, and FSEOG, Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grants. Eligibility requirements may vary per grant, and you may need to repay them if certain obligations aren't met. Now, if there's any of this that you want to take notes on or you need to go back and rehear about, please feel free to pause at any time, rewind, take as much time as you need to go through this as possible or as needed. Next, scholarships. Scholarships typically do not have to be repaid. They are need or merit based. They are offered by schools, nonprofit organizations, employers, religious groups, and so on. They can be local, state, or nation-based, and they're tailored to more specific groups of people, such as tribal members, FFA members, NHS members, sports players, drama members, and more. Each scholarship typically has their own deadlines and their own eligibility requirements. Now, as I mentioned with grants, you may need to repay them if obligations are not met. A really, really good example of this is the Build Dakota Scholarship here in South Dakota. For those of you who do not know what the Build Dakota is, it is a full ride scholarship to a tech school of their choosing, but it is for specific programs, and you have to stay in the state of South Dakota for a minimum of 3 years, 3 to 5 years. So if those obligations are not met, unfortunately, the Build Dakota will then be revoked, and instead, whatever has been paid already towards the towards your tuition will then have to be repaid by the student. Moving on from scholarships, we have work-study programs. Work-study programs allow a student to work and earn a salary that they can use to pay for their education. Only thing with work-study programs is that you can only work a certain number of hours depending on what your work-study award is. So total work-study award is based on when you apply, your level of financial need, your school's funding level. And lastly, loans. Loans do have to be repaid. There are federal loans or private student loans. Some states do offer state student loan programs. Most times, federal loans should be considered first, just because they typically seem to have a lot more benefits and flexibility in regard to private loans. Something that I have really been stressing with the students is that no matter what aid, even grants and scholarships, they should very carefully consider them before accepting them, especially with loans. Loans are a financial obligation and they have to be repaid. Secondly, grants and scholarships. Again, they can come with requirements such as maintaining a certain GPA while you're in school or pursuing a specific career. And if those requirements are not met, they can be lost, turned into a loan. So a little bit more about loans. There are two main types of loans. We have subsidized and unsubsidized. Subsidized loans are typically more available to undergraduate students, and the school decides how much you are allowed to borrow. These are the loans that I typically would recommend if you have to take out loans, as the U.S. Department of Education will pay the interest for them. But they only pay the interest while you are in school, at least part-time, for the first 6 months after you graduate and during a period of deferment. The subsidized loans also have a fixed interest rate, so you always know what they're going to be. For undergraduate students, you're looking around 6.53%, and for graduate students, 8.08%. Now, on the other hand, unsubsidized loans, which I do not recommend you take unless you absolutely have to, are available to pretty well all kinds of students, whether undergraduate or graduate. You are not required to demonstrate financial need to receive an unsubsidized loan offer, and the school will determine the amount based on your cost of education or cost of attendance, and other financial awards. Downfall with unsubsidized loans is that you are responsible for all interest during all periods, and the interest accrues during deferment or forbearance, whereas they do not with subsidized loans, and unfortunately, they are added to the overall total of your loan. Jumping around all over again, we're going to back up to Student Aid Index. So how do they determine your eligibility for student loans and federal financial aid? They look at your SAI number. So your SAI number is a number based on the amount that a family can reasonably be expected to contribute towards their student's education. This number is formula-based and ranges from negative 1,500 to 999,999. Now, these formulas use information that applicants provide on the FAFSA form about expected parent and student contribution, and in most cases, they will use some of your federal tax information that is retrieved directly from the IRS. Now, the most significant changes to the need analysis for this year's application include the removal of the number of family members in college from your eligibility, and the possibility for an SAI to be a negative number with a minimum SAI of 1,500 instead of 0. Now, regardless of what school you decide to go to, your SAI number will stay the same for that award year. But the next time you go to fill out the FAFSA for the 26-27 award year, your SAI number may change based on whether you're making more money, your parents brought in more money, you have a higher net worth, so on and so forth. So how do they calculate your financial aid need? So the financial aid office will subtract your SAI and any other financial assistance received from your cost of attendance in order to determine the amount of your financial need, therefore, how much need-based aid you're allowed to get. So your cost of attendance is the amount it will cost you to go to school. Most 2-year and 4-year colleges will calculate your cost of attendance to show your total cost for the school year. And a lot of times, especially I've noticed with, say, SDSU or USD, they will post an estimated cost of attendance on their website for you to be able to just look up and see right away. Now, if you are attending, your cost of attendance is going to be your estimate of tuition and fees, the cost of room and board or living expenses for students who decide to not contract with the school for room and board, the cost of books and supplies, transportation, loan fees, and miscellaneous expenses, including things like a personal computer. So now on to the really fun part. What is the FAFSA? The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. Note the word free is highlighted as you should never have to pay to complete the FAFSA. The FAFSA is going to collect demographic and financial information about the student and the family. This information collected is used by other organizations to award financial aid. In addition to the federal government, state governments, including South Dakota, colleges and universities, and some private foundations, they're going to use the data on the FAFSA to award financial aid, grants, and scholarships. So really, even if you don't want student loans and don't think you'll qualify for any federal need-based aid, you still want to complete the FAFSA if you are able. Now, normally the FAFSA is available on October 1st for the following academic year, but this year it was delayed to allow the Department of Education to test and resolve various issues before making the form available to all students and contributors. So for filling out the FAFSA, you'll go to this website, studentaid.gov. What this does is it is a navigation tool for the applicant when accessing the FAFSA on the website. It's going to have your user dashboard, and it's going to provide different options and messaging based on the status of the student's FAFSA. So on the site, you can take care of anything related to your financial aid, including starting a 25-26 FAFSA, viewing your FAFSA submission summary and your student aid report, making FAFSA corrections, viewing correction history, providing missing signatures, and then completing and submitting a renewal FAFSA. So I mentioned a few times previously that your parents' information will need to be included on the FAFSA, but some may not know which parent to include, or maybe you have a circumstance where you live with your grandparents and don't know what to do in that regard. So with that being said, your biological and or your adoptive parents are considered your legal parents. You must report information for both biological or adoptive parents if they are married or unmarried and living together. Grandparents, foster parents, legal guardians, older brothers or sisters, and aunts and uncles are not considered parents unless they've legally adopted you. Thankfully, the FAFSA has a new parent wizard tool that can help determine which parent or parents' information you should include. We're going to go over here which parent provides information or needs an FSA ID. So if your parents are married, you are going to want to report information on both parents, but if they filed their taxes jointly, only one parent will need an FSA ID. If they filed separately, both parents will need an FSA ID. If your parents are unmarried but living together, you will report information on both parents, and both parents will need an FSA ID. If your parents have never been married and they're not living together, you will use information on the parent who provided the most financial support, and they will need an FSA ID. If your parents are divorced or separated, the parent who provided the most financial support will report their information and will also need an FSA ID. If your parents are remarried, the parent who provided the most financial support will report their information for both themselves and the step parent. Now, only the biological parent will need an FSA ID if they filed joint taxes. If they filed taxes separately, the parent and the step parent will need an FSA ID. For any widowed parents, the surviving parent will provide their information and will need an FSA ID. So how do we go upon creating an FSA ID? Like I mentioned earlier, I did send out an email instructing you guys on how to go upon this. If you happened to not see it, or maybe just didn't have time to do it, here are some key points about the FSA ID, as well as how to create an FSA ID account. So you'll access the Create Account page at studentaid.gov. They're going to ask you to provide a unique username, enter an email address, provide a unique password, ask for your name, date of birth, social security number, provide a mailing address, a language preference, and then you want to provide your mobile phone number. After that, you will select the box if you would like to register your mobile phone to receive one-time secure codes if you happen to forget your username or your password. Now, you will be required to either provide your email address or to provide your mobile phone number and opt into messaging before you can even proceed with the application. For security purposes, you're going to complete some challenge questions and answers. Then you will confirm and verify your information, agree to the terms and conditions, and then verify your email address and/or your mobile phone number. This verification allows you to retrieve your username or reset your password without answering your challenge questions. Also, you can use your mobile phone number or your email address as your username when logging into Department of Ed systems. We'll also be able to notify you by email to any changes that happen to your account. But what is your FSA ID used for? So for students, it's going to be used to sign into studentaid.gov, to contribute to the FAFSA, to complete direct loan master promissory notes, applying for repayment plans, completing loan counseling, and using the public service loan forgiveness help tool. For parents, yours will be used to sign into studentaid.gov or to obtain a Direct Plus parent loan. So some friendly reminders. You will need to have your FSA ID verified prior to completing the FAFSA, which can take anywhere from 3 days to a week. Both the student and the parents contributing information will need an FSA ID, and each contributor must use their own email address. I strongly recommend with this, do not use a work or school email address, as these are typically disabled after you leave your job or graduate. Couple last things prior to starting the FAFSA here, you're gonna have to get together your documents that are needed. Things you will need include your social security number, your parents' social security numbers, your driver's license number, your alien registration number if you are not a US citizen, and your 2023 federal tax information, tax returns, and W-2s for you and your parents. Records of untaxed income will include things such as deductions and payments to self-employed and other qualified individual retirement accounts that have been excluded from income for federal tax purposes. Will also exclude payments made to tax-deferred pension and retirement plans, tax-exempt interest income, the untaxed portion of individual retirement account distributions, the untaxed portion of pensions, and the foreign earned income exclusion. Other types of untaxed income have been eliminated from the need analysis at this point. And lastly, you will also need information on cash, savings, and checking account balances, as well as your assets. So prior to us going in and actually logging in and getting started, the student will log into the FAFSA with their FSA ID username and password. The FAFSA belongs to the student, and so I recommend that the student is the one who starts the FAFSA process. This is also preferred by the U.S. Department of Education. A parent can start the process, but they will need to invite the student to complete their part of the FAFSA, which will be shown later. You want to make sure to select the correct FAFSA, as you are still able to apply for this past year's. So you want to make sure it says 2025-26 on it. Students may stop at any time and return to complete the FAFSA later without losing any data they've already entered. Now, once you start the FAFSA, you only have 45 days to complete it. Otherwise, all of your information will be cleared and you will have to start the form over completely. So when the students or parent starts the 2025-26 FAFSA form for the first time, you're taken through the FAFSA onboarding process. So the first FAFSA onboarding page up here provides an overview of the FAFSA form with the accompanying video. The second FAFSA onboarding page provides information about the different roles that may be required to participate in the student's FAFSA form and documents that may be needed to fill out the form. The third FAFSA onboarding page provides information about the types of questions the student can expect to see and how they can get additional help with filling out the FAFSA form. Lastly, the last FAFSA onboarding page provides information about what to expect once the FAFSA form is completed and submitted. On this page, the student can select the Start the FAFSA form to begin. So we are going to go ahead and I'm going to switch my screen here. Excuse me. So this is what the main web page for studentaid.gov looks like. So in order to fill out the FAFSA form, we're going to go to FAFSA form right here on the top and click Complete the FAFSA form. Once you click that, you will be led to this page where you will see Start a 2025-26 FAFSA form or Edit a form. So we are going to go log in to Start, in which we will be taken to this page. Now, mine may look a tiny bit different than yours. That is just because I am currently using a demo version of the FAFSA, but I am hoping that it will be as close as possible. So here's our login page. Once you go ahead and enter in your email, phone number, or FSA ID username and password, you can go ahead and click Login. Excuse me. So once you get logged in, we'll go ahead and click Start a 2025-26 FAFSA form. On this first page, they are going to ask you to click your applicable role to fill out the form, so either a student or parent. For this sake, we are going to start with the student. After you click that, go ahead and click Continue. And this is where we're going to go with our onboarding videos. I will go ahead and play them on my end. If you would prefer to just watch them on your own, you can go ahead and pause here. Otherwise, I'm going to go through and play through all 4 of the videos.
Hi, I'm Taylor, a college counselor here to answer your questions and help you on your financial aid journey. Wondering what FAFSA is and why it's important? The free application for federal student aid, known as the FAFSA form, is the application that students complete each year to receive student aid for college or career school. It's important that you fill out the FAFSA form too if you want to receive financial aid. The FAFSA form has a series of questions for you to answer, and it takes most people less than an hour to complete the form. The information you provide will be used to determine your eligibility for federal student aid, and many states will use your information to determine eligibility for state financial aid. This financial aid may include grants, scholarships, work-study funds, and student loans. When you complete the FAFSA form online, you can pick up to 20 schools to receive your information. Those schools will use the information to calculate how much student aid to offer you. Each school will send you an aid offer that details the types and amounts of aid available to you. Financial aid can help you and your family afford college or career school. Submit your FAFSA form to access the largest source of financial aid, federal student aid, as well as financial aid from your school and state. Make sure that you complete the form for every year you plan to attend school. You should submit it as early as possible on or after the day the form launches to meet state, school, and federal deadlines, and to be eligible for as much aid as possible. If you have more questions about the FAFSA process, visit studentaid.gov.
All right, so the second video is going to provide information about contributors that may be required to participate in the student's FAFSA form. This video explains contributors and information on how the student will invite them. Documents that may be needed to fill out the form are also included on the page right here at the bottom.
Hi, I'm Taylor, a college counselor here to answer your questions and help you on your financial aid journey. Wondering who a contributor is on the 2024-25 FAFSA form? Contributor is a new term on the FAFSA form. A contributor is anyone required to provide consent and approval to have their federal tax information transferred directly from the IRS into the FAFSA form, as well as a signature on the form. This may include you, the student, your spouse, a biological or adoptive parent, or a step-parent. The contributors on your FAFSA form are determined by your dependency status, your tax filing status, and your marital status. The information provided by contributors will be used to determine your eligibility for federal student aid, but contributors don't need to worry that they'll be expected to contribute to your school costs. Being identified as contributor doesn't mean they'll be financially responsible. Even if your or your parent's spouse isn't identified as a contributor, their information, including personal and financial details, will still be required on the FAFSA form if they are currently married and not separated or divorced. If you have more questions about the FAFSA process, visit studentaid.gov.
All right, video number 3 here is going to provide information about what the student can expect when they're completing their FAFSA form. This will include information about consent and approval, a time estimate for completing the form, and that they can save the form and return later if needed.
Hi, I'm Taylor, a college counselor here to answer your questions and help you on your financial aid journey. Wondering what it means when you provide consent and approval on the 2024-25 free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA form? For you to be eligible for federal student aid, you and your contributors must provide consent and approval on the 2024-25 FAFSA form. When you provide consent and approval, you agree to 5 things. First, you agree to share your personally identifiable information provided on the FAFSA form with the IRS. Second, you agree to have your federal tax information transferred directly into the FAFSA form via direct data exchange with the IRS. Third, you agree to allow the U.S. Department of Education, or the department, to use your federal tax information to determine your eligibility for federal student aid. Fourth, you agree to allow the department to share your federal tax information with schools listed on your FAFSA form and state higher education agencies for their use in awarding and administering financial aid. And finally, you agree to allow the department to reuse your federal tax information on other FAFSA forms that you are invited to and choose to participate on. It's important to note that when your contributors provide their consent and approval, it does not mean they are responsible for paying for your education. If you're a dependent student and your parent refuses to provide consent and approval on your 2024-25 FAFSA form, you will not be eligible to receive federal student aid. If you have more questions about the FAFSA process, visit studentaid.gov.
All right, and then the last FAFSA onboarding page provides information about what is to be expected once the FAFSA form is completed, submitted, and processed. So here's just a little snippet on the bottom. We'll go ahead and watch this.
You've submitted your free application for federal student aid or FAFSA form. Congratulations! Completing your FAFSA form is the most important step in your financial aid journey. But you may be wondering, what happens next? You'll receive a confirmation email after your FAFSA form is submitted, so make sure you review it carefully. As long as there are no errors, you will see your estimated eligibility for a federal Pell Grant and your estimated student aid index, or SAI, in this email. The SAI is an index number calculated using your FAFSA information to determine eligibility for need-based aid. It's the number that your school will use to decide how much financial aid they will offer you. It's important to remember that the federal Pell Grant and SAI that are listed in your confirmation email are estimations only. You will see your confirmed SAI after your FAFSA form is processed, and your school will determine what federal Pell Grant amount you are awarded. After your form is submitted, your information is processed by the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Federal Student Aid. If you completed your FAFSA form online, processing can take between 1 and 3 days. The information is then shared with the colleges, career schools, or trade schools that you listed on your FAFSA form so they can begin their process of awarding aid. You can check the processing status of your FAFSA form by logging into your studentaid.gov account. All students should stay on the lookout for any additional emails from federal student aid and from the colleges, career schools, or trade schools that you listed on your form, so you don't miss updates or next steps you may need to take for your FAFSA form. Starting in the 2024-25 award year, after your FAFSA form is processed, you'll receive your FAFSA submission summary. We'll cover what you can expect to see on your FAFSA submission summary in our next video. What happens after your FAFSA form is processed? For more information about the
All right, so after all of the onboarding videos, you can go ahead and click Start FAFSA Form on the bottom. So this here is the first page within the student section. Students, you'll want to verify that your personal information is correct. If you need to update any of this information, you will go ahead and go to your account setting. You can either save the FAFSA here at the top and go through and find it. Otherwise, they do have a hyperlink right here to make it a little easier. Here on the bottom, this is just a continuation of the top where you'll put your permanent mailing address. Go ahead and click continue, and then it's going to lead you to the student state of residence. So you're going to be asked about your state of legal residence. You will go ahead and select South Dakota or Minnesota, wherever you are from the drop-down box, and then provide a month and year of when you became a legal resident. For the purpose of this, I'm just going to go with what they gave me. So my state of legal residence, and then if the student was born in whichever state and has not moved out of the state since, enter their date of birth. So go ahead and enter the month and the year. Once those are completed, go ahead and click continue. Next, this page informs the student about their consent, approval, and use of their federal tax information. By providing consent and approval, the student's federal tax information is transferred directly into the FAFSA form from the IRS to help complete the student financial section. So by accepting to the terms and conditions, you're consenting to the disclosure of your information as described below, and the use of your federal tax information to the U.S. Department of Education's redisclosure, also as described below. So it's just stating that they can disclose your social security number, individual taxpayer identification number, last name, date of birth, unique identifier, and tax year for which information is required, as well as the date and time stamp of your approval for the use of your tax information in determining eligibility by the Department of Ed. States that they're going to use your federal tax information for the purpose of determining the eligibility for and amount of federal student aid under a program authorized under Subpart 1 of Part A, C, or D of Title IV of the Higher Education Act of 1965. It states that they may redisclose your federal tax information. They may redisclose your tax information to another FAFSA applicant FAFSA form for which you decide to participate by accepting an invitation to participate in another form. Your information will be redisclosed to an additional application. So again, that's kind of just a repeat of the information. By accepting below, you are consenting electronically to your use of your studentaid.gov account username and password, your FSA ID, as your signature, and certify under penalty of perjury under the laws of the U.S. that the foregoing is true and correct. So here you will need to select Approve in order to provide consent and approval for the use of your federal tax information to determine your eligibility for federal student aid. If you select Decline, you will not be eligible for federal student aid at that point. So go ahead and click Approve. So now you're going to be taken to this page. This page imports the student's federal tax information by directly transferring it into the FAFSA form from the IRS to help complete the student financial section. If you happen to receive a yellow box instead of a green box, and it says data not received, you are still able to fill out the FAFSA. You are just going to have to enter the information in yourself into the finance section. So being you are all filling out the FAFSA for the first time, there may not be federal tax information available. So you may have to enter in anything regardless. So after clicking continue, we are led to the first page within the student personal circumstances section that provides an overview to this section where they will ask you questions to help determine your eligibility for federal student aid. This information can affect the types of federal student aid that you are eligible to receive. So after clicking continue, it's going to ask for the student current marital status. So the student is asked about their marital status. And I imagine a large majority, if not all of you, are going to click single, never married. After that, you'll click continue. And the student is then going to be asked about their college grade level for the 2025-26 school year and if they will have their first bachelor's degree. The student will select that they are a first-year freshman and that they will not have their first bachelor's degree. If you are planning on attending a tech school or not going for a bachelor's degree, you will still need to select the first-year freshman option. After that, go ahead and click continue again. And the student will then be asked if any of the listed personal circumstances apply to them. The student will then select the most applicable. Once you have selected your option, go ahead and click continue on the bottom. The student then is going to be asked if they were homeless or at risk of being homeless anytime on or after July 1st, 2024, and you will select either yes or no. To select yes, you will need to meet the following criteria. You will have to not be in the physical custody of a parent. You will have to have lacked fixed, regular, adequate housing, and you must be 23 or younger. On the next page, it is going to look at student unusual circumstances. This information helps to evaluate the student's ability to pay for school. So the unusual circumstances, it's going to ask if it has prevented them from contacting their parents or if contacting their parents would pose a risk to the student. So this may due to leaving home due to an abusive or threatening environment, if you've been abandoned or estranged from your parents, if you have refugee or asylee status and are separated from your parents, if you're a victim of human trafficking, if you are incarcerated or their parents are incarcerated and contact with the parents would pose a risk, or if you are otherwise unable to contact or locate your parents. Now, if the student's circumstances result in not having a safe and stable place to live, you may be considered a homeless youth, and you should review the answer to the previous question about being unaccompanied and homeless. So go ahead and click either yes or no, and then continue. So this page is going to tell you your dependency status. So based on my answers, I'm considered a dependent student, which means I must provide parent information on the FAFSA form. The very first question, if the parents of the dependent student are unwilling to provide their information, but the student does not have an unusual circumstance, the student can choose to have their school determine their eligibility for a direct unsubsidized loan only. So if you remember from before, your unsubsidized loans are going to be loans where you are paying the interest at all times, regardless of deferment, forbearance, or anything like that. So note, by selecting yes, it makes the student ineligible for any other type of federal student aid, such as federal Pell Grants, federal work study, or direct subsidized loans. So I'm going to select no, and then we will continue. So as the student is considered dependent, they are asked to provide information about their parents. The FAFSA form, as you mentioned earlier, considers their parent to be their legal, biological, or adoptive parent. The student is then going to be asked if their parents are married. The student will select the best option and then will be prompted to provide information for either one or both parents. So being the parents are married to each other, they will need to provide information for both parents. So we'll go ahead and click continue. And then we will be led to the invite parents to the FAFSA form page. So we will go ahead and scroll down. A note, if they already have a studentaid.gov account username and password or an FSA ID, the information here must be exact to the information they put in or it will not work. So for the sake of this, I'm going to enter in the name of our demo parent. Excuse me. So we'll go ahead and enter the name, date of birth, social security number. Gotta close the box first. And then you will enter an email address. After you've entered in all the information, you can scroll down and click Send Invite. If you are unsure who will participate, as you are unsure which parent has the most information, or if they have filed jointly, you can go ahead and add a second invitation now. After you are complete with this, go ahead and click Continue. This is going to lead us to the student demographics section, which is going to ask questions about your background as well as the education levels of your parents. Some of these questions will help determine how much federal student aid you may be eligible to receive for school. So the student is going to be asked about your gender identity. The student will select between male, female, non-binary, or prefer not to answer. Note, this question is used for research purposes only and will not affect your federal student aid eligibility. Continuing on, it's going to ask about the student's race and ethnicity. These are also used for research purposes and will not affect your federal student aid eligibility. Question 1, is the student of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin? Go ahead and select all that apply. After that, it's going to ask what is the student's race? And again, you will select all that apply. Once you're finished with that, go ahead and click continue, and then you'll be led to the student citizenship status page. Again, go ahead and select what applies. After that, go ahead and click continue. The student is then going to be asked about their parents' education status. The student will then select the best option. This question is used to identify first-generation college students. For the sake of the presentation, I'm just going to go with one or both parents attended college, but neither parent completed college. Go ahead and click continue, and then you will be led to the parent killed in line of duty page. The student will select the best option, and this looks at eligibility for federal granting programs. Next, we have the student high school completion status page. This is going to ask, what will the student's high school completion status be at the beginning of the 2025-26 school year? You should all be selecting high school diploma, unless you are homeschooled or going for a GED certificate. Next, it is going to ask for student high school information. So from what high school did or will the student graduate? For the purpose of the demo, I will have a completely different school. You guys will, of course, search for South Dakota, White, and then Dubrook School District. Now, this lists an elementary school. When you are going through the FAFSA, it will not give you an elementary school. You will need to select a high school. But for the sake of the presentation, we're just going to go with what they give us. After you select a school, go ahead and click continue. Here is where you have to verify that the high school information is correct. If it is not, you will go ahead and click edit. If you can't find it, you'll go ahead and click South Dakota. Go ahead and click the location, and then you'll enter in the high school name on your own. Once you do that, you can go ahead and click continue. And now we go to Grove Hill High School instead of elementary school. Once all the information is correct, you can go ahead and click continue. And then you will be led to the finances page. This is the first page within the student financial section, and it is going to help determine your ability to pay for school. If you are interested in learning about special financial circumstances, you can go ahead and click this hyperlink here. For the sake of time, we are not going to click on that now. So go ahead and click continue. So now it is going to ask you for student 2023 tax return information. If the answer is 0 for any of the boxes or the question does not apply to you, you are going to enter 0. So first, we have IRA rollover into another IRA or a qualified plan. Let's go ahead and enter in your number for that. Next, we have pension rollover into an IRA or other qualified plan. We have the amount of college grants, scholarships, or AmeriCorps benefits reported as income to the IRS. The student paid taxes on these grants, scholarships, or benefits. These usually apply to those completing their FAFSA form again, not to first-time applicants. If married, please include the amount the student's spouse received. So being you are all first-time applicants, you should be able to put 0 in that box. Next, foreign earned income exclusion. This is going to include any type of income that you would have received in a different country aside from the United States. When you are done with those, click continue. Excuse me. On the next page, it's going to ask about student assets. First, we have the current total of cash, savings, and checking accounts, not including student aid. So the numbers I'm entering here are just the numbers that are provided with the demo resource. Go ahead and enter whatever you guys would have, regardless of the amount. Next, we have current net worth of investments, including real estate. This is not going to include the home that the student lives in. And to calculate net worth, you're going to look at the value of the investments minus any debt owed against them. You're going to use that same formula and you're going to enter the net worth of the student's businesses and any for-profit agricultural operation. Once you have those numbers in, go ahead and click continue. Next, we're going to go to the first page in the Select Colleges and Career Schools section, which is the final part of the student section of the FAFSA form that requires any information. So go ahead and click continue. Here it's going to ask where they should send the FAFSA information. You're going to search and select colleges and career schools. Now, if you cannot find your school when searching by school name or state, you can try searching by school code. And you have to add at least one college or career school to the FAFSA form. You are allowed to add up to 20. You just need to make sure to list all of the schools you are considering, even if you're not certain you'll apply to all of them. And you can always add or delete schools on the FAFSA form later. So here you can either search by school name by entering in the state. I'm going to go on a limb and put in Alaska for the purposes of this. And I'm going to go with Bloomington. Here a school is going to pop up. So you can go ahead and pick one. This is not the proper location, but it but it will give us a list of schools to pick from. So I'm going to add Bernard, I'm going to add Brown University, and I'm going to add Smith College. So now you can see down here, it said I had 3 out of 20 schools listed. If you are unable to find them that way, here is where you would go to search by school code, in which you would enter the federal school code here. So I'm going to go back to this presentation for just a second. And here I have listed, when I was doing senior interviews or senior meetings with the students, these are the most common responses that I received in regard to schools of choice on where they plan on going. So if you would rather search by school name, you can do that. Otherwise, here are the school codes for that. Feel free to pause at this point if you need to write down any of the numbers. Otherwise, I am going to continue on for the sake of time. So after the student selects the correct schools from the search results, you're allowed to review the schools before you choose to continue. Scrolling down here is all of them. You can remove them or you can view their information. When you review their information, it's going to give you some tuition, average costs, graduation rates, and more. Once you have all the schools you would like, go ahead and click continue on the bottom of the page. Now we are at the student review page. This review page displays the responses that the student has provided in the FAFSA form. The student can view all of their responses by selecting Expand All, or they can expand each section individually. To edit a response, you can select the question's hyperlink to be taken to the corresponding page. Now, being I'm in a demo, I am not allowed to click it and go back, but if you wish to, you will select the drop-down arrow here, then say I need to change my citizenship status. You would just go to the box here or to citizenship status and go ahead and click on that, and it will allow you to change it. If everything is correct, go ahead and click continue on the very bottom. And then it's going to ask you to sign and complete your section. So by signing the application electronically, you are certifying that you will use federal and/or state student aid only to pay the cost of attending an institution of higher education. It is certifying that you are not in default on a federal student loan or have made satisfactory arrangements to repay it. You do not owe money back on a federal student grant or have made satisfactory arrangements to repay it. You will notify your school if you default on a student loan, and you will not receive a Pell Grant from more than one school for the same period of time. By signing it, you are also certifying that all the information you provided is true and complete to the best of your knowledge, and you agree if asked to provide any information that will verify the accuracy of your completed form, as well as U.S. or foreign income tax forms that you filed or are required to file. So you can go ahead on the bottom and click that you agree to the terms outlined above, and then you can go ahead and sign your FAFSA. So now you'll be led to this page that states that the student section is complete. So you'll be reminded that your FAFSA form is not completed 100% and cannot be submitted until the parent completes the contributor section and signs it. So now we will go to that section. So typically, once you sign the form, you are going to be led to a page like this. So after the student section is done and completed, you'll see a screen like this telling you what you can do next. And parents, this is where you're going to open up your email. So feel free to pause here and get your email opened up, and we will continue on. So once you get your email opened up, here's an example of what the email may look like. This email explains that your child will not be eligible for federal student aid without your input, but that providing your information does not make you financially responsible for your student's education costs. So next, you'll click on Login, and I'm actually going to go to the proper email. So here's our example. We'll go ahead and click Login here somewhere towards the middle. Excuse me. And then it's going to be taking you to studentaid.gov, again, where you'll be instructed to sign in. So go ahead and click Login. It is at this point, if you have not created an FSA ID account, that you can do that here. You'll just click on Create an Account on the bottom instead of logging in. So after successfully logging in, you'll be taken to your My Activities section. And the parent will then see an invitation to be a contributor on their student's FAFSA form. So here you're going to click Accept Invitation. When you select Accept Invitation, a pop-up window is going to appear to remind you that your personal information is needed to fill out the FAFSA form. You're going to select Continue to agree to sharing your information, and then you will end up entering the FAFSA form. So this is just going to tell you that you've entered the form. You can go ahead and scroll down and click Continue. So when you enter the 25-26 FAFSA form for the first time, you are taken through the FAFSA onboarding process. Now, these are the same videos that we watched in the student section, so we are not going to rewatch them at this time. If you prefer to rewatch them to gain any extra information, feel free to go ahead. Otherwise, you can go ahead and click continue on the bottom through those. All right, after you get to the 4th of 4 onboarding videos, go ahead and click Start FAFSA Form on the bottom. Now, this will be the first page that you will hit within the parent section. Parent can then verify that their information is correct. If you need to update any of your personal information, you must access your account settings on studentaid.gov, or just like we did on the student section, you can go ahead and click this hyperlink that says account setting. If all of your information is correct, go ahead and scroll to the bottom and click continue. All right, similar to the student section, this page is just informing you about your consent, approval, and the use of your federal tax information. By providing your consent and approval, the parent's federal tax information is going to be transferred directly into the FAFSA form from the IRS to help complete the parent financials section. Feel free to please read through this to learn what you are consenting to. Frequently asked questions about consent and approval are also provided that you are allowed to expand and collapse on the bottom. After you're all done with that, you will select approve to provide consent and approval and then be taken to the next page. This page is going to import the parent's federal tax info by directly transferring it to the FAFSA form from the IRS to help complete the parent financial section. Again, similar to the student section, if you happen to receive a yellow box where it says data not received, they may have been unable to retrieve your financial information, so you may need to enter it in yourself in the finances section. After that, you will click continue. And then we will be led to the parent demographic section. Again, this is going to ask questions about you and your family. So first, you're going to be asked about your current marital status, where you will select the best option. For the sake of the presentation, we're going to click married, not separated. Excuse me. Where you will then be invited to invite your spouse or partner to the FAFSA form. So your parent, spouse, or partner, if they already have a studentaid.gov account or FSA ID, the information must exactly match it. The only thing that does not have to match your studentaid.gov account is going to be the email. So I'm going to go ahead and enter this in based on the demo information. Once you've entered in all of that information, you can go ahead and send an invite. And it's going to give you this information to double check that you have correct prior to sending. And then you'll click continue. Next, again, kind of a repeat from the student section, it's going to ask the parent for their state of legal residence. So usually this is the state where the parent lives. And then the date the parent became a legal resident of the state. Again, if the parent was born in that state and has not moved out of the state since, you're going to enter their date of birth. Otherwise, enter the date that they moved to that state. And that will lead us then to the parent financial section, which is what's going to help determine the student's eligibility for federal student aid. The first page is going to ask you of any federal benefits that you or your family has received. This is going to be things such as the Earned Income Credit, free or reduced school lunch, Medicaid, SNAP, TANF, or WIC, and a few others in there. If none of them apply or you have not received any assistance, go ahead and click none of these apply. Otherwise, fill it out as applicable and hit continue. The next page is going to ask, is the parent's family size different from the number of individuals claimed on their 2023 tax return? Family size is going to include the parent and their spouse, the student, and other people. If they now live with the parent and the parent will provide more than half of their support between July 1st, 2025 and June 30th, 26. This includes dependent children who meet these criteria, even if they live apart because of college enrollment. So for example, if you have an older sibling who is also in college, but their parents provide over half of their financial support, you will include them in the family size. If they have moved out since their 2023 tax return and are not receiving this financial assistance, you will select yes, the family size has changed. Excuse me. If your parents have had another child since then, you will also select yes, your family size has changed. For this, I'm just going to select no. You will then hit continue. Then they're going to ask the number of people in the parent's family who will be in college between July 1st, 2025 and June 30th of 26. Parents are not involved in this number. So if it is just you, you'll go ahead and hit 1. If you have an older sibling who is also in college, go ahead and put 2, so on and so forth. After that, click continue. And then it's going to ask for parent 2023 tax return information. This is going to be the same questions that were in the student section. So first we have IRA rollover into another IRA or qualified plan. You go ahead and enter your answer for that. Pension rollover into an IRA or other qualified plan. Go ahead and answer that. And then again, amount of college grants, scholarships, or AmeriCorps benefits reported to the excuse me, reported as income to the IRS. And then foreign earned income exclusion. Let's go ahead and fill all of those out, and then go ahead and click continue on the bottom. Next, you're going to be asked about your annual child support received. Enter the total amount of child support you have received for the last complete calendar year. If you do not receive child support, again, you will put a 0. Next, it's going to ask about your assets. This includes the current total of cash, savings, and checking accounts, but does not include student aid. Next, we have the current net worth of investments, including real estate, not including the home that you are living in. And again, we'll have current net worth of businesses and investment farms right after that. So you'll go ahead and enter the net worth of the parents' businesses and for-profit agricultural operations. Once you have all of these questions answered, you can go ahead and scroll down and click continue. Here you are going to be asked to review your FAFSA responses, and if you need to change any of them, this is where you will click your drop-down arrow and click which question you need to go back to. After everything is reviewed and correct, you can go ahead and click continue, where you'll be led to the sign and submit FAFSA form page. So on this page, you're going to acknowledge the terms and conditions of the FAFSA form and sign your section. Since all required sections are complete, you can both sign and submit the student's FAFSA form. So go ahead and sign for yourself and then submit the application for your student. So that the parent section is complete, you have your requirements for FAFSA submission. Now you have the opportunity to view the FAFSA form status, which again will take a good day or two to update. And then here's what you can do next. So you'll receive an email version of this page, and then you submitted your section, but it says it is not complete, so you may need another parent to fill it out. It all depends on how many contributors were invited to the page. So now, after you've done that and you've waited a couple days, you'll receive another email about your submission summary. So once you open up your submission summary from your email, you will get this page. You will receive your FAFSA submission summary for your processed FAFSA and any subsequent corrections that you submit. The FAFSA submission summary is broken into 4 tabs, as you can see here in the middle: eligibility overview, FAFSA form answers, school information, and next steps. At the top, the student can see when their form was received and when it was processed. You also have the option to print your FAFSA submission summary to keep for your record. On the eligibility overview tab, the student sees information about what federal student aid they may be eligible for, such as federal Pell Grants and federal direct loans. Any amounts of financial aid that display on this tab are estimates and are not guaranteed. Financial determination of the student's financial aid eligibility is provided by their school's financial aid office. Continuing to scroll down, you will see your student aid index number. Here, our student aid index number is -355. Now, if you remember, the range is from -1,500 to 999,999. The lower the number, the higher the financial need. So being you are in the negatives in this case, that means that your eligibility is pretty significant. Going back up into our next tab, the FAFSA form answers, you will see your answers that you provided on the FAFSA form. If you provided any answers that you are now noticing are incorrect, you can choose to make a correction, on which you will go to that and click this blue button here. Continuing on with the FAFSA form answers page, you will see all the answers that you provided, and then you will also see on the bottom here the parent section. So you'll get to see all the answers that your contributor provided on the FAFSA form. On the next tab, we have school information. On the school information tab, the student will see information about the college and/or career schools that they selected to send their FAFSA information to. The student can then compare the graduation rate, the retention rate, transfer rate, default rate, median debt upon completion, and their average annual cost of their selected schools. Last, on the Next Steps tab, the student will see comments that pertain to their FAFSA form. Some comments may require the student to make a correction or send additional documentation to their school. Other comments may be informational and will not require any further action from the student. So lastly, along the right side of their FAFSA submission summary, the student can access additional resources, including visiting My Aid, which reviews detailed information about your federal loan and grant aid, including your enrollment history, payment history, and subsidized usage, or the college scorecard, which compares schools by size, location, graduation rate, and more. So after you are done with all of that, you may end up receiving something like this. This is a sample financial aid offer, also referred to as an award letter. A school aid offer tells you what financial aid you can receive at a particular college or career school. The offer includes the types and amounts of financial aid you may receive from federal, state, private, and school sources. This combination of aid is your financial aid package. You should review the letter carefully and understand which aid is loans and which is grants. You should also be sure to understand any obligations prior to accepting any financial aid. It is at this point where in person, I would invite you to ask any questions. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me at sydney.mcgilvery@k12.sd.us. And from there, we will move on to the South Dakota programs section of the presentation. So first we have the Dakota Core Scholarship, which is tuition and applicable fees at participating South Dakota schools. The requirements include minimum grades and an agreement to stay in state for work in specific critical need occupations. You should understand that the scholarship will turn into a loan if requirements are not met, and you can apply at the link here by December 15th. Now, I will post this presentation separately so you guys are able to go in and click on that link instead of having to type it all in. So that will make it a lot easier. For next one, we have the South Dakota Needs-Based Grant Program. To be eligible, you need to be a resident of South Dakota and enrolled at least part-time at a participating institution. You need to have a completed FAFSA and requirements established by the institution met. Again, you'll be able to click on this link. Next, the Build Dakota Scholarship, which, like I mentioned earlier, is a full ride scholarship for students enrolled in a high-need workforce area program at one of the 4 technical colleges in the state of South Dakota. You are required to work full-time in South Dakota upon graduation for a minimum of 3 years. The next application cycle will be starting January 1st of 2025 and will go to March 31st of 2025. Now, you should understand that the scholarship will turn into a loan if requirements are not met. For more information, you can go to www.builddakotascholarships.com or on any technical college's website. Next, we have the Freedom Scholarship, which is a new statewide initiative to encourage South Dakota students of all economic backgrounds to live and work in South Dakota after graduation. It is available to students with unmet financial need as determined through their submission of the FAFSA in conjunction with the financial aid office at their respective university. You should understand that the scholarship will turn into a loan if requirements are not met. For more information, you can go to www.freedomscholarshipsd.com. Next, we have the Critical Teaching Needs Scholarship, in which you agree to work in South Dakota in a critical teaching need occupation for at least 5 years. And you should understand that the scholarship will turn into a loan if requirements are not met. You will need to attend a participating South Dakota post-secondary institution, in which the application and more you can find out online at the link there. Last thing before we go into resources is just some scholarship tips. First thing I recommend is develop a plan. Understand the cost of the school that you're going to, and then establish a scholarship goal to be able to reach or to be able to pay for that schooling amount. Conduct research next. You should research both local, college, state, and employee programs. Look at organizations or employers that align with your career choice, and then look for scholarships that match that career choice. Next, prepare your applications. Write all of your essays, proof and edit them as neatness counts. Something that I've been suggesting to a lot of the seniors is to write a very basic essay and then just change it based on the requirements for each scholarship. Lastly, stay organized. Use a scholarship tracking sheet, follow the deadlines and requirements, and have a dedicated email address that you use for all applications. Again, I would not recommend a school email for this, as it will end up getting shut down after you graduate. Last but not least, we have our resources. So one of the resources we have is mappingyourfuture.org. Which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to student success. They work really closely with the Education Access Foundation of the South Dakota Community Foundation, which helps students and families in the state achieve higher education goals. And they have a lot of educational tools that can be used to help you out. So we have planning, education, where you can learn more about the higher education opportunities in South Dakota, looking at how to pay for school, succeeding, and much more. Next, we have studentaid.gov, which is where we just filled out the FAFSA. And then we have this lovely scholarship tracking sheet, which I highly recommend that all of you try out and see if it's beneficial for you. I'm going to change this so I can type in if need be. It's going to refresh on me. All right, so the first tab on this is the scholarship application tracking. You enter in a scholarship name, the due date, how much it's worth, if you can renew it, which means if you can use it for multiple years, any action needed, so if you need to send in a letter of recommendation or anything like that, contact information for the organization or person who is giving out the scholarship, and then the date that you submitted the scholarship. Second tab here will keep track of scholarships that you've received. So again, you'll enter in your scholarship name, the amount, how they split it up. So sometimes it is just given all in one semester. Sometimes it is split between 2 semesters. Any action needed there. And then again, contact information for the scholarship, as well as a nice reminder on whether you have sent them a thank you. The last tab here compares college costs and financial aid offers. So you can go ahead and you can change these into any school name that you want, and then fill in based on what the tuition and fees are, books and supplies, living expenses, transportation, and other. Here, it will automatically add all of those costs together for you. And then here, as you are receiving your scholarships, you can enter them into these boxes here, whether it's grants, scholarships, any type of loans, outside scholarships, federal loans, state loans. And again, it'll add it all up here. And then what happens is this total out of pocket, it's going to subtract the total financial aid cost from your total costs and tell you exactly how much you can expect to pay out of pocket for your education. With that, I have these scholarship searches, some good resources on places that you can look up scholarships. All of the seniors should also have a link to a Google Calendar that has a bunch of scholarships listed on it. I try to update it at least once a week, if not once every other week, with any scholarships that I end up stumbling across. Each due date is posted on there, as well as any eligibility requirements, links to them if they are online applications. If they're PDF applications that need to be printed out, those are also attached there. So with that, I do not have anything else. Again, if you guys happen to have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me via email, or if you call the school, they can get you transferred to me and I can also talk to you that way. So I thank you guys all for taking the time to watch this video and for supporting your students as much as you do. With that, have a great rest of your day.